Welcome to the Growing Your Financial Business the Woman's Way podcast. I'm Robyn Crane, and I was a financial advisor for over a decade. But before that, I was a singer-songwriter. And now, even as a mom of three with a teenager, toddler, and a baby, I run a seven-figure business helping women in financial services grow their businesses and make a bigger impact. In this podcast, I'll bring you financial advisors, industry influencers, and highly successful entrepreneurs to give you innovative strategies designed for women. So get ready to learn how to get in front of the right people, get more ideal clients, and be able to grow your ideal business so you can live your ideal life. Welcome to Growing Your Financial Business the Woman's Way. I'm Robyn Crane here with Diane Manuel. Diane has actually been a client of mine for, do you know how long it's been? I don't even know.
A long time.
Long time. This is probably like a year or 2 years, probably, yeah. I don't know, something like that. But Diane and I have worked together, and I'm so excited to bring her on because she's always such a joy to be around and so fun, but also kind of like a no BS kind of gal, like move over everybody. Like I'm gonna do what I want to do, but behind all that, just like everyone, there's fear, like fear among us. And we were talking about, what do we want to bring to the table that's real for people? Because as a financial advisor herself, Diane's really experienced this firsthand, being a financial advisor, growing her business, and she'll tell you a little about her background and her path. But we wanted to bring that to you because you've embraced fear in so many ways and enabled you to grow your business. So welcome, Diane, to the podcast.
Thank you, Robyn. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Okay, so let me ask you. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into financial business to start anyway, because everyone has a nice story.
This was a second or third career for me. I was working in philanthropy. I have an MBA. I was interested in the field from years previous to my entry, but it was more of a stock trading business. So when it started switching over to financial advising, I decided to take the plunge, and I ended up at Merrill, which was a disaster because it was just a bunch of old white mean dudes. And I was there way too long.
Did you say old white?
What's that?
Did you say old white meat dudes? Yeah.
Mean, MEAN. Yeah.
I swear I thought you said old white meat. And I was like, well, that's another way to put it. So they were old white mean men, not white meat, although it sounds delicious, at Merrill Lynch. And it was horrible. So tell us a little bit about that.
It was a space where people didn't speak to me. And imagine going to work all day long. No one speaks to you. You're in the elevator together. You're in the parking lot together. It was just terrible. And I come from organizations and companies where that wouldn't even be allowed. Like you would be fired for not having some sense of camaraderie. There was a person of color who was in charge of our office, and all those dudes hated her, just hated her. And when she was finally removed from that position, the office applauded when that email went out. If you can imagine how terrible that is. So luckily, not soon after that, I was able to go to another firm, independent RIA, run by a Black woman who had been in the business for years. She had been at Smith Barney, and she was getting tired of their madness too. So I'm here in LA at a firm that's all women and all women of color. So we're pretty unique in the industry. We're SEC registered, independent RIA. So it's great.
Awesome. Okay, so let's dive into this fear thing. So you went Merrill independent, and you've been there for how long?
Maybe 5 years.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we clearly are not great with time here. So it might have been 20 for all you know. So tell us, can you remember, even in the last couple of years, and we've been working together during that time, but can you remember certain times, like if you can paint the picture for us of where you were really scared, really scared, and what that was like? Because I think a lot of us, including myself, when I was an advisor, and of course now all the time, like I experience fear, and I've found that the more I just like head straight on and go for it and headbutt it in the face, essentially, like the more that I get out of it, because I not only do I grow, but typically that risk pays off. So can you give us some examples of times when you were really fearful and that it paid off?
Sure. So at Merrill, of course, that was a space where it's just assets under management, right? You're just collecting money. At the firm I'm at now, we're doing financial advising. And although I did that at Merrill, to be paid to do that is a whole nother story. And so I was like, what are these conversations I'm supposed to have with people who don't have assets? And basically, I want them to pay me to help them. And so that probably took, after many conversations, it probably took 6 to 8 months to get my first financial advisory client. And I remember when the woman came on board, and I was so grateful. But every time I talked to somebody, whether it was on the phone or in person, I just was unsure of the conversation. And, how much data do I collect? Because that was what I knew from assets under management. You're collecting data. What's your income? How much money do you have in your IRA? What are your investment accounts? Those type of questions. I didn't know really how to ask other questions. And so every time I was on the phone with somebody or they were in the office, I didn't really know what to say to them. But I just kept trying things out, and it just kept getting better and better until I found you, and that was just exponentially better. But it was literally fear every time I looked at a new prospect, and didn't know what to say to them.
So that's very kind of you to say it was exponential. And that's great. And I know you said in the last couple of years, you've grown your business 20% every year after year. So that's amazing. Congratulations on that. What was it specifically, since they don't know necessarily, listeners, like what you had, like what changed, what helped you get over that fear or embrace that fear or dance with that fear to allow you to get over that hump? Because if you're saying 6 to 8 months where you could charge, and not everybody can charge, but you can think of plenty of examples of fears that I'm sure many advisors have, whether they charge or not. But it's kind of like asking for the sale, whether it's asking for the money or asking for the assets or asking for them to buy a plan. There's that fear around asking for the sale. So what was helpful for you specifically that we can give to the listeners that really allowed you to get past that? And we could talk about any specific thing.
I think for me, the concept of this being mission-driven work, like what do I think I'm bringing to the table? Do that assessment personally and be willing to share that with anyone I'm talking to. So whether it's a identified prospect or not, like this is what I do. I want to work with women to help them be efficient and effective with their money. I think there should be a movement of all the women in the United States who should do that. I may or may not work. I won't work with everyone, and that's okay. But I still think there should be this movement. And when I say that to people, they're like, well, I want to be a part of that. And to really instill this concept of, oh, I can get on board with Diane and this movement in a variety of different ways, whether they become my client, whether they read my blogs, they follow me on social media. And the minute I could say that to someone, they were like, oh, well, that's amazing. Even if you can't help me, I know someone you can help. And I think that piece, moving away from the data and having these qualitative conversations about what women want when they say financial freedom, and what they mean is they want opportunities, they want options, they want to be able to do what they want to do on their own timeline, and understanding what that means, and me putting in place a roadmap for them to do that. For many people, not everyone, that sounds like an amazing opportunity that they will pay for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a couple things there. So I think one, a shift in mindset. So one is that you said mission driven. So to me, that's partly recognizing, like in your mind how valuable you are. And I always talk about getting really clear on who's the one person that you want to clone. Like, who do you want to help? Who's the person or the people? But like, when you think of one person, it allows you to really imagine helping and serving that person and changing that person's life. When it's theoretical and so many people, even especially if it's like many, many target markets, like we're just talking about everyone. Oh, I can help anyone, everyone. Of course you can. But everybody is different. And so who is the person that you would really be best at helping? So one, I think you got really clear on that and then owned that, like it's not bad, whereas so many, especially Merrill Lynch, yes, they're targeted to high net worth clients, but that's about all, right? Which could be everyone in that group, which is still really no one to me. So you being really clear about helping women, being on this path, especially, you focus on helping African-American women, women of color. That was definitely, a focus for you as well. And so having that mission behind it, like, this is who I want to help and that they need me. That's just a mindset thing, right? That's who I want to help. What you said second, well, you didn't say exactly how you did it, but I recognize the language, is that you can communicate that well with your message and your messaging. And I often say that the industry doesn't even know, is very unfamiliar with the word messaging, and messaging drives everything. Like, the only thing that's going to drive someone to want to talk to you, to meet with you, to work with you, are their beliefs, right? That drive those behaviors. And what drives beliefs? Messaging. So what you just said is kind of similar to what we talk about as what we call the audio logo. It's like who you work with, what their challenges are, and then the results that you help them with. And it sounds like you kind of just got that ingrained in your skin of this is my mission. And not only did you say that, but you also came up with something even bigger, that it wasn't all about you. That's a movement. It's not just a mission anymore. It's a movement, and a movement means we got to do this together. Like, no one is in a movement by themselves unless they're having a bowel movement. Other than that, they're not in a movement, right? You have to have multiple people around. So you are creating this movement and owning it, and then people want to be part of that. And you have a very infectious personality anyway, because you get passionate about something and you're like, this is like, let's do this. Like, it's very infectious. People want to be part of that. So I can see that, and I've seen that as you grow your business. Can you tell me, like, I love to think of like the moments, because it doesn't sound like you're afraid of anything. Okay, where so this is about getting sideswiping your fear. Like, this is about being able to embrace that fear, regardless of whether it exists always, because it always will. But you don't sound fearful. Like, I don't believe you. And so, can you tell me a time or a couple times where you're like, I was freaking the F out because I didn't know what to say, or I didn't know what to do, or something else where you just felt like there was just like, almost like, when you feel like you're blushing and you're like, please tell me, like, no one's noticing. Are there times like that you can tell us about where you truly felt like you wanted to run, but instead you didn't?
So I mostly work with women, and even if they're in relationships, the woman is taking the lead. Recently, I got quite a few couples, men, women, two women, okay, but men, women kind of just freak me out because I don't know the dynamic that I'm stepping into. And although even on my LinkedIn, I talk about being a Black woman and what this means in the financial industry, I'm getting couples, a diversity of couples, a diversity of ethnicities. So I have a couple who don't know me, I don't know them. See, and the guy emails me and says, hey, let's change the date because I want my wife on the phone too, on the Zoom. And I was like, okay, fine. I'm kind of freaking out because I don't know what this is. He's taking the lead. He knows I serve women. So I'm calling my therapist friends. What do you do with couples? Like, what do you do? Like, how do you handle that? And they're like, oh yeah, you gotta be careful. Don't let the guy take charge. Make sure you talk to the women, but don't equivocate. That was their big thing. Don't equivocate. Don't say soft words like maybe or probably or like, yeah. I called in everybody I knew that worked with couples. Like, how do you do this? And I went through my protocol that, mostly I got from you, and went through, and so now I say at the beginning, I have a protocol. I'm going to ask a set of questions, if you don't mind. And I believe that all the things you want to tell me, you'll be able to share. And if not at the end, please feel free to add. We went through the protocol, and I felt fabulous at the end. I was scared the whole time, but the cherry on top was when the woman said, "You're right. Everything I wanted to say, I've said. Thank you so much."
Oh.
And I remember thinking to myself, okay, after 2 years of practicing, and that's how you get over the fear, is practicing. Whether or not they become a client or not, that was the perfect interview and interaction. It's taken me 2 years, all this practice, to get to the perfect interview. And they became clients, like in one call. Even though we had scheduled another meeting, book a meeting from a meeting, the husband emailed me and says, "Hey, we're on board. What do we need to do?" And and I realized it just takes practice, just over and over, to get to a point where I feel absolutely comfortable answering these questions, anticipating those follow-up questions, because I've really listened. And I've listened to so many people. I know how to dig a little deeper. And everyone has a story, and that's what's key with couples, because each person has an individual story to tell that maybe even the other person in the couple hasn't heard. And it's amazing. Like, I talked to a CFO of a private foundation and company, and she says, when I was 20, I filed for bankruptcy. And then she said, "I don't think anyone I've ever said that out loud." And to get to a point where she's like, "Yeah, my credit is almost 900, whatever it is, and I'm running this company. But when I was 20, I was a mess." And that's when when I knew, it's like, okay, practice, practice, practice. And you get to a point where I'm not as scared, but every time I'm on a call with a new person, I have to just take a breath. It's performance, and how actors say you need that little bit of fear when you're on stage or when you're in front of the camera, because that's what motivates you. That's living in that little anxious space helps you perform. And that's, I'm a Hollywood girl. I'm an LA girl. I grew up here. And that's the space I live in. I'm like, okay, if I'm going to be, Julia Roberts or Taraji P. Henson or whoever, that little bit of anxiety is good, and live with that to get to the other side.
Yeah, it was reminding me, I was trying to think of when you were telling me that, like, when did I last have a lot of fear? And because I do have little bits of fear. I think you get more and more used to it. Like you said, you're kind of always living with it, but there's definitely the more, of course, the more you stretch outside your comfort zone, the more it comes up again. And I do feel like, for me especially, and I think this is all women, and I mention this a lot because I work with women all the time, is that I think the number one fear is that fear of judgment. And so it's like, well, when are the times that I feel like I'm really, really scared? It's typically because I'm scared of judgment. And I know you participated in this, but we recently, a few months ago, launched a new challenge called the Appointment Generator Challenge, called the Tag Challenge. And the first one we did, we had about 100. It was kind of like to my list, and people who mostly, not all knew me for sure, but it was some warm audience. And then we had about 100 women there. I think it was, something like 100. The second, and I was like it was new. It was more like I was so busy working and getting it all ready that I didn't have that much time to be very scared. And once I get on, I'm on, and I kind of forget anyway. But the second challenge, we had 250 women. And I was telling Ashley, my COO, and I was like, I am scared. I'm really scared. And like before I went on, and when I was getting ready, and I knowing that 250 women were there, and I'm like, Ash, I just did this like 3 weeks ago, and I know all this content. I have it already. Like, this is way less work because it's all ready to go this time. It's not new. I've already done this. I'm like, why am I so scared? And she's like, I don't know. What do you think? She's good at bringing it back to me. Ashley just like supports, like, she's like, what do you think? And I was like, you know what I think it is that now there's 250 women who could get mad at me. Because what if because they're scared. And I realized this in the first challenge, I'm giving them this new strategy that's very outside the box. It's very different. They have to really stretch outside their comfort zone. They got to, put themselves online, take more risks, do things differently. And even during that first challenge, there were some ladies who got some pushback from someone, oh, you're trying to, sell me or something like that, or whatever. And then I immediately get scared, because if they feel judged, then I'm scared they're going to say, oh, you're teaching us something that, makes us whatever, makes people judge us. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's 250 women now who could possibly say, you suck, right? You're not, this isn't good. And mostly because they're scared, not because I really do suck, but their fear, it's like projected on me, scared me a lot. And we didn't even have, I don't think really hardly any complaints or anything, but I just realized that it was that pressure of, I don't want to disappoint anyone. And when you're in this space where you can impact, so many people, and here we are on a podcast, who knows how many listeners we'll have, but like, there's always like that, in talking Julia Roberts and famous people, there's all this like possible judgment that could be on it with social media and this and that I think even today more than ever, we are taking a lot of risk. Because if we're in the limelight to any degree, and as a business owner, you have to be, or you're gonna die. Like, so there's just so much, I think, just fear of judgment around there. And so that made me very, very nervous. And I think it pretty much, when I think back of other times when I was just extremely scared, besides maybe like, jumping off a cliff, that's scary to me. That makes me very nervous. I didn't bungee jump, but I did go on a cliff and do like a jump with the bungee cord that wasn't head first. So I felt like it wasn't as scary, but I was scared. Okay. That wasn't a judgment thing. That was real fear. Like, that was just, I'm going to die. But other than that, mostly it's judgment. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I tell my clients, and then I say, Diane, to do what you tell your client is forget the judgment, start right now. Just begin. In fact, I'm doing a whole social media thing this week. Is just the thing for the week is to start. Because if you don't change your behavior, and we can think about things, my theory is this: all women are fiction writers, because the stories we tell ourselves could be made into movies every single day of the week. Because we can think about, oh my gosh, if I do this, then this can happen, and then this can happen, and so and so is going to say this, and oh my gosh, it'll be terrible, and that, and they're never happy endings. And you're like, why don't you just do something and let's see what happens? And I think it's what you've said, or somebody has said to me, that change and growth only comes at the margin. So if you don't realize it's the journey and not the destination, you're never going to go down and define your roadmap. It's not going to exist. You have to get in the car, put it in gear, and point it in a direction. And it doesn't mean there's not detours. It doesn't mean that you don't decide to change directions. But if you don't get in that car and go somewhere, then you're just going to mentally just sit at home and think about all these what if scenarios that likely will never happen. And I had a client who needed an attorney for help. And she's like, Diane, I haven't talked to the attorney for a month, and it's a friend, and he's not charging me, and he hasn't gotten back to me, and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, this needs to be done by the end of the year. Call that dude. She called him, and she's like, he said he just missed my emails. That was all. It wasn't like some big scenario. So he wrote the letter. We're back on track, doing what we need to do. And she had created this whole short story about why he wasn't helping her anymore. And he's just like, I missed your emails. And Like, why do we do that to ourselves? Robyn, why do
I know. Stop that. Stop that. Yeah, we definitely do that a lot. I do that a lot. And I actually, this is kind of I wasn't, might be an inappropriate story. This is why I'm pausing, but I know I do that for certain things, but one of the things that happened, I actually, it was right before I had our Positioning Yourself for Profits event this year. Were you there? That one?
No.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is might be something I cut out. No pun intended. But basically, I went to. So I just had a baby. So now she's, at the time recording now, she's 7 months old. So you know this, but for the listeners, and I've been breastfeeding her as you know. And I had, this is what I like, just get it out, just tell us.
Get it out. Come on, Robyn.
It's a really good example of me being scared to tell you this, because it's like, it's kind of weird. It's about my nipple. Okay. It's about my nipple. So I had this tag on, now the whole world would know, I had a tag on, like right in the middle of my nipple, like just, little extra skin on my nipple. Mm-hmm. This was never a problem for breastfeeding. I had this right when I got pregnant with my son. So he'll be 3 soon. And so it's been a long time. It doesn't even bother me. I'm not a very superficial, like, I don't care. Like, my husband doesn't care. It's like, it's no big deal. But at one stage, my OBGYN, whatever, she's basically like, oh, like, you could just cut that off and it's fine. It'll probably bleed a little, but it's okay if the baby has a little bit of blood. It's no big deal. And so like she said, I could just cut it off at home. Like, I cut it off at home.
Yourself.
Yeah, which like, I was like, oh, I don't know that I really want to do that. But like, my husband, we sometimes call him Dr. Daddy. He would totally just like nip that off, no problem. But no, I decided I was good enough that I did not do that at home. But like, at one stage I went back, and this was a couple months ago, something. And I went back there and I was like, oh, wow, you're at it. Since you're here, like, I'm not going to do this at home, but can you just like do your thing, like clip it off? And she's like, sure. Like, we didn't even have a discussion. It wasn't like doctors are usually like, here are the risks, sign on the dotted line. It was just like, oh yeah, no problem. Laid back. She cuts it off. It bleeds a tiny, tiny bit. And then, I put a little gauze on it or something, and I go home. Of course, I had not anticipated that I was going to do this, because it just dawned on me when I was at the OB that I should get this, quickly done. And I hadn't pumped. So it's like, it'd been 4 hours, something like that. And I'm like, not engorged, but all, big breasted, if you will. And so I come home, and so I'm like, oh, I better pump, right? It barely bled when she chopped the thing off. And so there I go. And I'm like, I start pumping, and girl, it was like, I had milk on one side and beet juice on the other side. It was bleeding like crazy. It was insane. And I was like, oh my God, are you like, and it's not that it hurt, anything like that, but I'm like, all you think about when you're breastfeeding, like, I got to get enough milk to my baby. Right. So, and we had some frozen, but it's like, how much did I really have? I'm working a lot. And so fine, I did that once, no big deal. The next time, I mean, like 4 hours later, I do it again. And when I like took it off for a second, it's like freaking Beetlejuice, man. I mean, it's like spraying everywhere. I was like, crap, like, this is not a little bit of blood. Like, this is the problem. I called my OB and I was like, hey doc, like, this is not normal. Like, it's bleeding. And what do I do? Because I'm afraid that my milk supply is going to go down. And now I'm thinking like, and so then, she's like, oh, I didn't expect that to happen. And she's like the coolest OB ever. But I mean, she's like, I really didn't expect that. And that's all. And so she's like, well, you can do this and that, whatever. She gave me a little advice. I called my cousin, who's a lactation consultant, and she was like, oh, you have to keep pumping or you're going to get mastitis. And so here I am, like, and I'm talking about, you were talking about how we start to extrapolate and make all these stories up. And I am like, why did I do that? I can't get it out of my head. I'm so mad at myself because I didn't even care about the stupid thing. And then I'm super upset and I keep thinking, why did I do that? And I keep going back in time. So one thing we do, we're thinking about what the future is going to hold. The other thing we do is we go back in time. What could have been, what could have been, what could have been. You can't get it out of your head. And I'm like, why did I do that? Shouldn't I have done that? If I just hadn't done that, what if I just forgotten? Like, I should have waited. Why did I even take that chance? I didn't even, and I was so mad at myself. And at the time I was running a 2-day event. It was virtual, but I was running this 2-day event. And so of course, like, I don't ever not tell anyone anything. And so I'm telling like all the ladies, luckily I just work with women, all about my boob and how I'm like so worried that I'm not going to be able to breastfeed anymore because my
baby will die from starvation.
yes, and my baby's gonna die. And now I'm like, I'm, teaching this whole course, and I'm like going back, and I'm like, to pump or not to pump, that is the question, because my cousin was like, you can't not pump. And then the OB is like, you gotta wait 12 hours. And I'm like freaking out. And I just kept imagining, oh my God, this is the day where I have lost all ability to feed my baby, all because of this stupid tag and this one decision I made that, was the wrong decision. And I'm just beating myself up. And then I told the ladies, and I'm like, okay, I'm letting it go. It's fine. Because this is like, I go through this stuff too. Like my clients are like, oh, you go through that stuff, like where you're beating yourself up all the time. Yeah. Sometimes it's about business. Sometimes about mom. Sometimes like all the other things are being thrown at all the time. And so finally I had to like coach myself, like let it go. Like it is what it is. And I'm sure it'll be fine. And then, of course, like I did 12 hours off, and, a couple bleedings into like, it was fine. And my boobs are back. My milk is back. Everything's good. She survived, ladies. She survived. It was amazing. But boy, do we create stories. And like you said, fiction stories that never happen.
Never happened. And I learned, I'm kind of a sports fan, basketball and football and stuff, but I was watching an interview with a sports person, Pat Riley, who is the general manager, used to be with the Lakers, he's with the Heat now. And he was telling a story about when he was with the Lakers, and he had an opportunity to go coach the Knicks in New York City. And all of that whole New York freaking madness that comes with running sports teams in that city. And he was telling the owner of the Lakers, he was telling a story. He says, I was telling him I was scared. And I'll never forget that, because I'm like, here's this big time, good white dude talking about being scared. And that is key. Like, they get scared too. And they go and talk to somebody to get over those fears. And that's exactly what you did. You talk to your cousin, you talk to your doctor, you talk to other people, and you're all in your head going crazy. And people are like, Robyn, that's freaking ass hysterical, but calm the hell down. Your kid ain't gonna die. You're gonna bleed a little. It's gonna be okay. And that is key. So if there's anything I can encourage any women to do who are listening to this podcast to do, is to share. Because if you don't share, if you keep all that freaking madness in your head, it's going to be this fictionalized story that's going to end up terribly. But if you just share, and that's what I didn't do when I was at Merrill Lynch. I didn't share because I didn't know anyone else in the industry. So I didn't even share that with my friends, how stupid and crazy it was. And I realized that was my biggest mistake. So if I can encourage anyone and everyone, it's like, just share what you're going through. As you say, hey, I don't know how to help you, but this is what I hear. And maybe hear some other people to talk to, or this is what's rational about what you're saying. This is what's irrational about what you're saying. And don't worry about it. You can get through it. And I think that is what we don't do all the time. And just get out of our own head and just share with people what you're thinking, what's going on. Because at the end of the day, and I wrote a blog about it, it's like we ask our clients to tell us the world. Every single thing, like what time do you go to the bathroom almost? And if we're not willing to share that same information about ourselves, then our clients are going to know that. That's going to impact our ability to do great work and great business and to help as many people as we possibly can. I mean, that's why you're successful. You tell those crazy stories. I've learned to tell crazy stories. I mean, I checked in on clients at the beginning, ex-clients, who were no longer my financial planning clients. At the beginning of COVID, I reached out to all of these people. And my clients, oh yeah, Diane, your husband had back problems. Is he doing better? What's up with your mom? I'm like, did I tell people all this? I couldn't even read. It was amazing to me. But that's why they became my clients. And that's why they listened and did what I told them to do. Because I was vulnerable and was willing to share when I made mistakes, when I messed things up and the things I've learned. And that helps us, I think, get over that fear, because it helps build camaraderie when we share that. You realize the judgments that you have in your own head are only your own judgments, and they're not the judgments that other people are making about you. And the people that are making bad judgments, delete the haters. Just delete them out of your life. You don't have any time for them.
And I agree 100%. And this has been awesome. Thank you so much for joining me and for bringing this to the ladies. And I think it's true. It's like, I was hesitant about sharing that. And I feel like, oh, that's probably going to be, everyone wants to hear about the boob story. Yeah. It's like the things you're most scared to tell are the things that people will enjoy, because you're being vulnerable, because you're being real, and because you're sharing. So thank you for ending it like that, and delete the haters, delete the haters. Awesome. So again, thank you so much, Diane Manuel, for having us. And thank you all for listening and watching. And we will see you next time on Growing Your Financial Business the Woman's Way. Bye. Hey, it's Robyn Crane here. And if your big goal is to increase your revenue this year and grow your business, then make sure to attend our next event coming up soon. Go to femalefinancialadvisors.com to learn more about how you can explode your financial business and get more qualified prospects, convert more ideal clients, and create your ideal business so you can have your ideal life. Can't wait to see you at the next event. Again, go to femalefinancialadvisors.com to claim your seat so you don't miss out. I'll see you there.